Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jamie Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we are talking about inclusive language with Erin Doan, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director for Vizo Financial, and DEI champion Jay. Jay, I'm going to have you say your last name because I know I always mess it up. I want to say, hold on, Mikalik.
You
Did I
did
get
it.
it? I got it right? Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Jae Mikalik is joining us today. I'm so excited that I said it right. So thank you both for joining me today to talk about inclusive language. Before we get started, would you mind, telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and also why DEI is so important to you? Aaron?
I'm Erin Doan. I have been with Vizo Financial for just a little over 20 years, and I've worked in a variety of roles, starting in member services. But most recently, I've moved into this diversity, equity, and inclusion role. And I'm really just enjoying it, learning so much around this topic. But also in this role, I'm having an opportunity to get to know my co employees so much better, having some deeper conversations, and really getting to work on issues and projects that are really making our organization just more inclusive for everyone, and hoping making everyone feel like they belong here on our team.
All right, wonderful. Jay, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
I have been at the corporate a lot less. I started as a temp in March of 2020. So my entire experience has been virtual. I have never been to our main office or any of our other offices. I work in the Pittsburgh office primarily. And it's been really great to see the DEI team as well as our culture team make sure everyone still has a sense of belonging in this new hybrid environment that we're a part of. And DEI is also important to me as a member of the LGBTQ community, and I feel like all of our employees at Vizo have really taken it like a knack for getting into the stuff that we're sharing with them.
All right. Well, thank you both and welcome. So, Aaron, let's get started. What exactly is inclusive language?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. When we think about the language that we use, we know that our language can build relationships and make connections with others, but it can also create barriers between us. And it can really have a profound impact on someone's sense of being accepted or belonging. I did look up a definition of inclusive language, which says inclusive language is the words and phrases we use that avoid biases or expressions that discriminate against groups of people based on their race, gender, socioeconomic status, and ability. And I think, when we are intentional to use inclusive language, we can build stronger connections with one another and really contribute to an environment where everyone feels like they're welcome.
All right. Thank you. So, Jay, can you give me some examples of inclusive language versus non inclusive?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. One of the things that comes to mind quickest is when we're doing introductions. For example, ladies is not inclusive. Even if you think you're in a group or a meeting of only women, some women's spaces often include non binary persons as well, as they often run into a lot of the same issues that are DEI related. And so it's best to say, even if you think you're sure that everyone in your group is of a certain gender, it's best to use non gendered terms like team, friends, y'all, because y'all means all, or everyone. All of those things are much more inclusive. The same thing goes for openings like ladies and gentlemen or guys, because guys is usually used as like a slang term, but I know guys wouldn't like to be called ladies. Um, I personally always use the word partner or spouse because I'm not straight. But when I do this, people assume I'm not straight. So people who are straight using those terms, the more often you use inclusive terms, the less people are going to make those assumptions. Like if everybody's using the word, then those assumptions wouldn't be made anymore.
All right. Well, then, Jay, how can we improve inclusive language? What are some of the steps we can take to improve inclusive language?
One of the first things that I always tell people is that actively listening to others is a great step. For example, we have a couple Southern offices, and I know a lot of people in business like to use honorifics like Mr., Miss, Ma'am, Sir. And I'm not saying you can't use those words, but if someone tells you that they like a specific one, like I prefer Sir as it's the gender neutral term, it's used in the military and on Star Trek, but some people don't like it at all. And so this is something where we're going to be constantly learning, either listening to what someone tells you they prefer or reading about an article when you see one pop up. And a great example that I can use recently is specifically with ableist language. Both Lizzo and Beyonce, within a couple months of each other, brought out songs with the word spaz in them, which is an ableist term. And they both changed the word in their songs right away. But many people on the internet were still upset and saying they shouldn't have had to change the word instead of listening to those that were actually affected by the term. And so being able to listen and have empathy is one of the best things that you can do.
All right. Erin, why is language important for diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Well, I mean, really, I think language is incredibly important in all places. Again, it helps us build connections with one another. It fosters collaboration and a sense of belonging when we're talking with another person or groups of people. But I think inclusive language in the workplace is specifically important because it really fosters a culture of inclusivity at the organization. It helps others know that everyone will be treated with respect here and everyone is welcome at our workplace. I think this says a lot to members of various marginalized groups who may find themselves not included in various settings and situations that they encounter, as well as it sends a strong message to those that are from more dominant groups on your staff that all are welcome here and we want everyone to feel that they belong.
All right. So then, Jay, how is Vizo Financial promoting inclusive communication?
This is something we're actually working very closely with our marketing team on, and I'm very excited about. We are working on videos that explain alternatives to words that you might use today that are less inclusive to foster a more inclusive environment. So, like I was talking about meetings, we're planning on having a video specifically about greetings so that you know what's the best way to greet someone when you're not sure, especially because sometimes people were writing emails. And if they don't have their pronouns in their signature, and they have a more gender neutral name like Emerson or even Ashley or Sandy, you're not sure what to say, it's always best to go with something that's gender neutral. So we're going to have some trainings and other things come out on Litmos to help people with that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Erin, what top three actions would you recommend for a credit union to create a more inclusive culture at work?
Well, I think number one for me is to champion the use of inclusive language and practices from the very top of the organization. Get your CEO to make public statements and send company wide emails about their commitment to these efforts to the entire team. And I think that really sets the tone and expectations of all of your DEI activities at the credit union or organization where you work. I think another important action is to be intentional to seek opportunities to provide education on various DEI related topics. I think some introductory ones that are important are, like using inclusive language, like we're talking about today, unconscious bias, microaggressions, and how to be an ally. I think also being intentional to create, we say safe spaces for coworkers to ask questions, have conversations, address various topics can enhance communication and really give people an opportunity to have open and vulnerable discussions about things that they're thinking about, or maybe things they're seeing in the news, or things they're experiencing or witnessing within their families and communities. I think just providing some of those spaces allow for those discussions that again just build that connection amongst us. And some ideas for that. We said in the beginning of our interview that Jay is part of our DEI champions group. Create an internal DEI council of employees to champion these efforts. Um, do some informal sessions like a brief lunch and learn, or create a DEI club, or do a coffee chat. I think there are creative ways to grab small pieces of time that sort of bring people together around these topics, that can really be beneficial for the whole organization. And of course, education can always be incorporated into larger staff meetings or trainings, to just make sure that you're getting the message out there, amongst the whole team.
All right. You
Oh,
know,
and
oh,
I'm so sorry. I forgot about the third one that I just wanted to mention real quick. I know I could talk about this all day. But the one thing that I really did want to mention was that, for me, I think a third action is to really think about all the tools that you have at your disposal to share that information with employees. Think about, how can you use your website, an employee intranet, newsletter? Do you have survey tools? I mean, that list can go on, but all of those channels help to keep your messaging consistent and frequent. And also use them to ask for feedback and input. And I think, just a side note, keeping those feedback efforts anonymous can often elicit the most honest responses, and where you can really identify some good areas for growth and where you can go a little deeper.
yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
sure, sure. And I'm still learning. I know that, I'm not perfect, and I need to make adjustments as well. And I try to make sure that I'm being respectful to everyone. But, how should, Jay, how should someone respond when non-inclusive language is used?
I'm really glad you asked that question because it can be both when you notice you make a mistake or when you notice that somebody else makes a mistake. And one thing, when you notice that someone else has made a mistake, it can be a quick correction in the moment. Like if you notice someone uses the wrong name or the wrong pronouns, just, oh, hey, they actually go by Steph now, or hey, they go by Alex. And those are the easiest ones to correct right away. But if someone says something that might need to be a longer conversation, like explaining to them why a word or a joke that they made was bad, you can wait and have it aside with them after the meeting or wherever you've heard it to discuss it in depth. This is great too when you're too nervous to say something in a group or too worried that it'll turn into like a kerfuffle if you bring it up, to just do it when you have the person by themselves. Now, when you yourself notice that you're doing something, it's best to quickly correct with a brief apology instead of making a big deal about it. When you belabor your apology, you make it more about yourself and how bad you feel for making a mistake than about the people that are actually affected by the language.
All right, thank you. Erin, what are potential consequences of non-inclusive workplace?
Well, I think one of the most serious consequences is that you can see high employee turnover at your credit union, which is very costly for any organization. And I think also, for those that do not leave, you risk a toxic work environment with very low engagement amongst your people. This leads to less innovation, less collaboration, less productivity, and just kind of this general sense where people feel like, I'm only here to earn a paycheck. I come in, put in my time and I go home, without that deeper engagement. And that's certainly what we don't want. We're recording this on International Credit Union Day. And for us at credit unions, we really live the people helping people philosophy. And I think this concept of inclusion is just kind of baked into who we are. We want to create workplaces where people feel they belong. Yes, because it's good for business, but mostly because it's just the right thing to do.
All right. Well, thank you both. Jay, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, even if you don't think that you're doing enough, people definitely notice when you're trying. Some of my biggest smiles lately at work has been when someone's caught and corrected themselves quickly without making a fuss and moving on like they would with any mistake, like when you just say the wrong word, like you say shirt instead of skirt or something like that. And I really think that it makes a huge difference when you show someone that you care. There's been a lot of empathy around our DEI, and I've personally received emails from people, and that's always made me feel really great too.
All right. Erin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thought is always just get started. I think for some, this work can feel a little daunting or overwhelming. And I think, especially when it comes to the topic of inclusive language specifically, none of us want to say the wrong thing and risk offending someone or looking stupid. I think we all feel that way. But this work takes some courage. And I would say just start somewhere. You can do it. And I think that taking these steps, you'll find that it makes a tremendous impact on the entire culture at your credit union.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I truly appreciate the time. If you're interested in learning more about diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, our team of DEI champions publish a monthly newsletter called Perspectives. You can find these articles on our DEI page of our website at www.vfccu.org. As always, thanks for listening and have a great day.